You know that feeling, right? The room goes silent, you've got that perfectly sharpened number 2 pencil, and there's a stack of paper in front of you that feels like it holds your entire future. We have all felt that high-stakes test anxiety. But have you ever stopped to wonder what's actually going on behind that bubble sheet? Well, today, let's pull back that curtain and really demystify achievement tests. I love this quote. Charles Schulz, the guy who created Peanuts, just completely nailed that feeling of constantly being measured and tested. And while life might actually be a long essay, a huge part of our education is still measured with these tests, all designed to figure out what we've learned. So what are we even talking about here? At its heart, an achievement test is pretty simple. It's just a tool to measure what you know. Think about it. From a pop quiz in your high school history class all the way up to the SATs or the ACTs, chances are these are the most common kinds of tests you have ever taken in your entire life. They're all built to assess your knowledge in one specific area. Okay, but here is the first really crucial thing you have to understand. Not all achievement tests are created equal. Not even close. The midterm your professor whips up over a weekend is a completely different animal than a national standardized exam that millions of students are going to take. Let's break down exactly why. A teacher-made test, it's designed for one specific class, but a standardized test? Whoa, that is a massive, massive undertaking. We're talking about an extensive, super expensive development process. They go through hundreds of trial runs, they're rigorously tested for fairness, which we call reliability and validity, and they're normed against these huge groups of people to make sure the results are consistent and actually mean something. Now, this next idea is probably the single most important concept for understanding how these tests work. It really all boils down to one question. Is the test comparing you to some fixed standard, or is it comparing you to every other person who's taking it? And that question leads me to a pretty famous story. So to really get the difference between these two types of tests, let me tell you this quick joke. You've got two friends out hiking in the woods, and suddenly a huge grizzly bear comes charging at them. One friend starts freaking out, yelling, "We've got to outrun the bear!" But the other friend stays totally calm, turns to him and says, "No, I don't have to outrun the bear. I only have to outrun you." And right there, that second friend perfectly, if a little brutally, explains what a norm reference test is all about. It's about ranking you against everybody else in the group, the norm. It doesn't matter how fast the bear is, what matters is that you're faster than the person next to you. The first friend, he was thinking in terms of a criterion reference test. He was trying to meet a fixed standard, the criterion, which was be fast enough to escape a bear. So you see, it's all about whether you're measured against a set bar or against the crowd. So that begs the question, right? How does one of these giant norm-referenced standardized tests actually get made? The process, honestly, is incredibly intense. It can take years, and it's a far, far cry from your teacher just writing up some questions the night before an exam. I mean, just look at this. This isn't a week's work. This process can literally take years. After they figure out the test purpose, a team of experts will write a massive pool of questions, way more than will ever end up on the final test. And then every single one of those questions goes on trial. They're tested by real students, they're analyzed, and the ones that are too confusing or biased or just don't work, they're either rewritten from scratch or just thrown out completely. It's only after all of that brutal refinement that the final test is put together and standardized. It is an incredible amount of work. And when the writers are actually creating all those questions, they're not just pulling ideas out of thin air. Not at all. They follow two incredibly specific blueprints to make sure the test is fair, balanced, and is actually measuring what it's supposed to measure. So this first blueprint is called a table of specifications. The best way to think about this is like an architect's plan for a building. It's basically a grid that lays out exactly what content has to be on the test and in what proportion. So for example, if you spent 20% of your class time learning about validity, then 20% of the test questions have to be about validity. It guarantees that the test is a fair reflection of what was actually taught. Okay, so that's blueprint number one. But the second blueprint, I think this one's even more fascinating. It's not about the topic of the question at all. It's about the level of thinking the question forces you to use. It's a whole system just for classifying cognitive complexity. And here it is. It's called Bloom's taxonomy. The easiest way to picture this is like a ladder. Down at the very bottom rung, you've got knowledge. That's just simple recall of facts. But as you climb the ladder, the thinking gets way more complex. You move from just explaining a concept to applying it, to analyzing it, creating something new, and then, at the very top, making sophisticated judgments. And this example just shows the difference so perfectly. A simple knowledge question is pure recall. What are the ingredients in a roux? You either know the fact or you don't.
But an evaluation question from the top of that ladder is a whole different ballgame. Create a recipe where a roux is central and explain when it is essential. To answer that, you have to know the facts, understand the concept, apply it, and then judge its importance. It's a world of difference in the thinking required.
So we've got this insane 8-step process, the table of specifications, Bloom's taxonomy. You might be wondering, why go through all this trouble? Well, it all comes down to one thing: creating a test where you can actually have confidence in the results. And here's the real takeaway. A high-quality test has high content validity, meaning it actually tests the right stuff because it was built using a blueprint like the table of specifications. And it has high reliability, meaning it gives you consistent, dependable results because every single question was so rigorously tested and refined. That intense scientific process is what gives the test its power, and ultimately, its fairness. So the next time you sit down with that bubble sheet, you'll know it's not just some random collection of questions somebody dreamed up. It's actually the final product of a long, scientific, and incredibly deliberate process designed to be as accurate and as fair as humanly possible. So now that you've seen behind the curtain, does that change how you feel about taking the test? It's something to think about.